It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here on the show. So much to get to on this Monday coming out of a big college basketball weekend, and it's not done yet. I mean, I will say this. I've heard a lot of people as this thing has gone on, BJ, say, hey, look, I love the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing, but there is something cool about coming out of a wild weekend and dropping Monday right back into the Elite Eight and going after it and not having to wait till the end of the week to get to it, man. I mean, so we have Elite Eight basketball coming up tonight. A lot of other things to get to here on the shows. We'll chat with Jake Roos, UGAsports.com. Georgia with a big recruiting weekend. I got a lot of commitments over the weekend. We'll break those down. Also, spring practice continuing there in Athens. John Shipley of the Jaguar Report will join us. Jag sitting there at number 1. Urban Meyer giving some hints as to where they will go with that first pick and what do they do the rest of the draft. John Shipley will help us out with that as well. And we'll also chat with Russell DeMasi, offensive coordinator at Savannah State. They got a home game in this weekend, part of their 2-game spring schedule, and it was 85-0. What a way to have some fun out there on a Saturday afternoon. We'll talk to you about that coming up in about 35 minutes here on the show. But fellas, Braves baseball is back in 3 days. We got college basketball going on. This is a heck of a way to wind down the month of March.
Yeah, some fascinating games coming up to set the Final Four, and then I think people should be super excited for the start of the Braves season. I really do. We were going over some of the developments, Kevin, from the last couple of days, and it looks like the roster is taking shape, maybe even in some respects quicker than anticipated with Mike Soroka getting back out there and potentially being a part of the Braves in the very near future at the highest level. I mean, the Atlanta Braves, and you talk about some of the bench pieces, some of the news we've seen. It looks like, the Braves have kind of a new X factor. They have a new, but they've decided on a backup catcher. This is a team that looks and feels like a championship team to me. And I say that understanding that the Dodgers have an all-star team on the field, on the mound. But in terms of the NL East, this looks like the best team, the most complete team, the most balanced team, the deepest team. The team that has the rings, by the way, I mean, the teams that has that has the hardware when you think about what they've done the last couple of years. So I think Braves fans not only should be excited, I think there should be an expectation that we're going to be in the postseason and we're going to win. You were knocking on the door, Ben, of the World Series last year. I think this team, again, on paper, and I understand the dynamics are different. You have a full 162 now, but this team on paper is better than the team last year. We've talked about it time and time again. You were running out, with all due respect, guys who were journeymen, sometimes at best, on the mound, and you won the division last year. Now, especially once Mike Soroka's back, you're talking about maybe the second or third best rotation in baseball. Ozuna's back in there. Acuna's good to go. I was reading a story today that he might be primed to kind of take over for Mike Trout. I mean, the storylines are many, and it's going to be a fun year.
Yeah, I mean, I know everybody saw that Mike Soroka might get an inning or two. Stinger's probably just doing that one to kind of tell the fans, listen, this is where because you know how it is, Kevin. You get tired of saying, hey Snit, where's Soroka in his, as far as like him making a comeback. Look, you guys get a chance to see him, and it's probably going. It says 2 innings, which means it's probably going to be 1 inning, very, very brief. Pablo Sandoval, I mean, he's obviously going to make the team. Got a Kung Fu Panda side in BJ. I saw that same. I saw the same. Article talking about guys to replace Mike Trout as the best player in baseball. And obviously they compare what they've done to what Mike Trout does. But I do agree. When you look at this Braves team, one thing they're not going to do is sneak up on anybody. The Braves are ahead of schedule. I think it was like all in for 2019, and they superseded expectations in 2020 in a pandemic-stricken season. I wish they would have won. It kind of would have went what the Braves have done. Because if I'm not mistaken, Kevin, when the Braves won it all, it was in a shortened season, correct? When they won it all. So I thought they were kind of going to go with the tradition of what the Braves do. But the Braves, add Nate Jones to the bullpen. You talk about this lineup. You talk about potentially getting Mike Soroka back sooner rather than later. I hope they don't rush that. Max Fried is ready for the big times. Ian Anderson proved that he's ready for the big times. I just think that, how is Pache going to do in center? How is, Austin Riley going to do at third? But that NL East, you talk about the top 10 players of baseball, 5 of them was in the NL East. So it's not going to be an easy three-peat, BJ and Kevin. But they finally get to say, all right, man, let's get the full season going. Kevin has been doing the countdown way before since last Thursday. He's finally going to get it going this Thursday. But I'm looking forward to this Braves team, and I want to see how those guys look. And BJ, like I said, I want you to be your normal self. We're going to get to kind of what happened last night. I get that part. It was rough. My squad was out way before, but we all can agree. We all root for the same professional baseball team. At least we can have some type of continuity there.
Yeah, well, again, I think you look at the season coming up, going to be an interesting one for Atlanta because, again, I think the starting 9 is really good. The bench could be an interesting piece. You got Pablo Sandoval made the team. This young kid, Adrianza, who played with the Twins, coming over, had a huge spring, going to be a big piece off the bench. You go with Alex Jackson, who maybe, BJ, not the better catcher, but maybe the one that, it sounds so bad to say this, but the one who can afford to sit and watch Travis d'Arnaud do all the catching, whereas William Contreras needs to be catching every day. So, I think that's one of those things where the bench could be a weak spot, but if this team hits the ball like they're capable of, that 1 through 9 every day is going to be very, very tough for most people. And again, Mike Soroka news should make you excited if you're a Braves fan, but given the nature of a torn Achilles, everything we've heard is he's ahead of the curve. He's ahead of the curve. How much of that is you keep pushing it, you don't want to rush it?
I mean, that's kind of what I wanted to ask you. Soroka is a foundational piece for Atlanta, clearly one of the best pitchers in the National League. I think we're all encouraged, kind of heartened by the fact that he's to the point where physically, mentally, he can go back out there and compete in live game action. But Kev, I mean, realistically, is this something just to kind of get him in the rhythm more so than we want to see what you can do? Is it just, hey, let's sort of mimic the proverbial steps it takes to go out there and get ready for live baseball, to go out there, kind of hold the ball, go through your mechanics, throw 5, 7, 12 pitches, and then get out of there. You guys know I'm pessimistic. Anytime there's injury stuff, I always want the extreme amount of caution to be taken, and I'm absolutely sure that's being done here. I'm just saying from my standpoint, I'm always amazed at how fast these guys come back. But, I mean, Kevin, how do you kind of process this, and can we draw a conclusion? I mean, does this mean that Soroka might be ready in 2 weeks, 4 weeks? How do you identify kind of what this means?
I mean, the Braves keep saying it's going to be mid to late April. I mean, if that's the case, you're talking about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks, and I think we'll see. I guess the pitching on the mound will tell. But again, I'd hate to sacrifice the short term for the 162, which obviously is a long road to haul here. Christian, what do you have?
I was going to ask you, Kevin, because we're talking about on second down. Usually, when you hear about injuries and people coming back, there's a stint down in AA and then AAA and then
right
back. Obviously, you didn't have that last year.
And you're not going to have that till May this year because they're not doing AAA until May. So you have the alternate site is happening once again until May when the AAA, because they pushed the AAA season back a month. So it's not like you can just say start in AAA. Well, that doesn't start for a month. So I guess they're going to get him in some alternate site work and hope he comes back from there. But yeah, I think that's always a concern is that you rush back, especially in a sport like baseball. I think basketball will be the same way. Football, you understand it. Hey, you got 16 games and every one of them is huge. Basketball, it's like, do you need a guy back in January? Or do you need him back for April, May, June for the playoffs? Do you need Mike Soroka back in April? Or would you like to have him 100% in May, June, July, August when you're really getting into the crux of it? So, I mean, I guess you put a lot of faith into the Braves trainers. That's what you're paying the money for, to make sure they're good to go. But, yeah, I certainly wouldn't want to rush him back out there just to get him back in April and pitch. Not meaningless baseball, but certainly that's not what you want Mike Soroka for. You want Mike Soroka for October, for September, for big games, and you got to get there first.
I mean, I give a lot of credit to the training staff, too. These are – I don't want everybody to think when you see Snit doing this probably was – I mean, he's very, very hesitant because but the thing is, too, and I'm not comparing myself to Mike Soroka at any stretch of the imagination, but when I broke my foot going into my second year, I'm sitting right next to Bo Schobel, a guy that got drafted me in 2004, and coach told him, hey, man, you need to hurry up and get back. He told me, Ben, take your time. But when I was ready to go, it's a lot of stuff being talked about behind the scene. Now, I'm not a big time pitcher in the majors, but sometimes sometimes you got to show the player too. To be, all right, we're gonna let you go out there because I'm pretty sure what you do in practice, you may be given 95%. You're gonna give all you got when you out there. So sometimes, like, all right, Mike, we're gonna let you go out there just to show you that while you back, you're not back. Because the thing is, and progress is a good thing. I mean, this when you work out the Kings is a great. I mean, it's not a game that counts. He's not going to get 2 full innings, but that way, when they go and say, "All right, Mac, this is what we're talking about. Look at your mechanics. Look at how you take control of it." But I do agree, Kevin. I hope maybe the beginning of May, because you always take one. They always say, "Okay, if he's ready this week, give him 1 extra week. Give him 1 extra week to come back." Because I believe Soroka, once he's out there, they're not going to pull him. I mean, once he's back, he's back. But I do think 2 innings is not going to hurt. I think it just shows the player that sometimes the player's frustrated with the coaches or the managers and the trainers because he want to be back out there. So let him go out there, and then they can give him a real evaluation of, because Snit's probably getting tired of answering the questions. He's going to get it every single day. But as long as they didn't say, all right, Soroka's going to start the season. What? No. He's going to get 2 innings. I think it'll be fine because baseball is very, very different than any other sport, and you can't really compare nothing to being a pitcher for what they do. So yeah, I do agree with what they're doing because, like you said, BJ, it's probably going to be very, very every pitcher's on a pitch count. But Soroka might get 12 if that. They're not
and Kev, I wanted to ask you this, and I agree, Ben. Obviously, just countless, perspectives of analysis went into this, and obviously, what's best for Mike in terms of his injury and his return is clearly paramount. But Kev, when he does come back, I mean, and I know over the duration of a regular season, the roles kind of mesh together with off days and double headers and rainouts and all like that. But will he be brought back in as kind of a middle of the rotation guy, or do you think they will try to make him the quote sort of I don't know, will they try to pair him in front of Fried so that you have Fried Soroka for the duration of the year?
Maybe at some point, not till maybe after the All-Star break. I think once the season starts, it kind of doesn't matter. In my estimation, it's all about setting it up for the postseason. So, I mean, once the season goes about a week and a half or 2 and off days start shuffling around, I mean, who cares who the number 1 guy is? You pitch on when it's your day. It didn't really line up where it's always 1v1 or 2v2. So about the first week of the season is all that matters. After that, it doesn't matter. I don't think you try to set that up till after the All-Star break when you have a clean break and go from there. We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. A lot of basketball coming still tonight with the first part of the Elite Eight. We'll get to that and more. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Welcome back. It's 3 and Out here on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us. Thanks for making us a part of your day. We are streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com on your mobile device with the ESPN app. Glad you are with us here. A lot to get to. Russell DeBasi, Savannah State offensive coordinator, going to join us coming up. They had their first home game in over 500 days this past weekend, and they got a big victory, 85-0. I would say that's pretty good on any given Saturday there. So he'll join us coming up in just a little bit. But BJ, Ben, what a wild weekend in the NCAA tournament, the Sweet 16 round. Now done. We got the Elite Eight tonight. My bracket is pretty much toast. I think I have 2 teams left in my Final Four. I still got my champion pick, but that's about it. It's looking rough for your boy here in the 2021 NCAA tournament. We are down to the Elite Eight tonight.
Yeah, and we got to look through this. I'm pretty sure I'm ahead of all of y'all, which I feel good about, including Christian and Cam might be ahead of me. I know I'm ahead of Cody, but I feel pretty good about my stature in the office. But I don't feel pretty good about my own stature and my own family, because I think my mother is number one. Yeah. I think my mother is leading the whole thing. And unfortunately, even though my Final Four is still intact, I got some intel. I think her Final Four is the same as mine, so I don't have the ability to jump over her. But yeah, I mean, come on, look, Kevin, you're supposed to be, of everybody on the show, you're supposed to be the guy that's like at least bringing respectability to the show with your picks, and you've been awful this year.
I'm awful a lot of times, but no, this year it's just like everybody else. 2020, 2021, you get a free pass. This is my free pass. You know, it's like, hey. Can't predict that stuff. I mean, it is what it is. So I'm calling just a free pass. I mean, you had a team that's normally pretty decent. Virginia didn't even practice for 2 weeks before they played a tournament game. Some of that stuff, you know, that normally is not a factor, was a factor here. So I think it affects the outcome of my bracket just a little bit. So I'll consider this a one-off. Throw it away. It's a free pass. It doesn't matter. Does not affect the mean at all with my picks.
And Ben, I know you had an epic game by game breakdown on Friday, but I do think we saw kind of the cream rise to the top over the weekend. Where look, if you're in the Sweet 16, you're a really good team. But the one thing that stood out to me from this past weekend's games were that the teams that won largely won in convincing fashion. I know you had the UCLA Alabama just insanity and that game going into overtime, but you saw, you know, Gonzaga really look the part, really play well and win comfortably. You know, you saw Michigan really play well and kind of control the game all the way through. Houston, after a scare against Rutgers earlier in the tournament, you know, really starting to settle in and look good. So I know some people have said, oh man, this NCAA tournament doesn't have Kentucky. It doesn't have, you know, Kansas in terms of at this point. It doesn't have Carolina. It doesn't have Duke. Well, you have UCLA in the Elite Eight, which might be the most famous basketball program of all time. But the teams that have gotten here have earned their way here first and foremost, and a lot of them won in dominant fashion. And you still had the drama. I mean, that UCLA Alabama game was crazy. And then you had the back and forth between Arkansas and Oral Roberts, which came down to the final couple of seconds there. But I think for the most part, the teams that we expected to be right here in the mix at the end of the tournament, whether you're talking about Baylor or Gonzaga or Michigan, they've really flexed their muscle the last couple of days.
Shout out to the Pac-12. I mean, at the end of the day, BJ, I know it's funny. We just can't let certain things go. Oh man, no Duke, no North Carolina, no UVA. No, I mean, it happens. And the Pac-12 was a team that, you know, I go all the way back to, you know, even though it was a different season with football, they was kind of the last one. It's like they had to play because all the other Power Five was like opting in well before them. And then you look at how certain teams got coming in on losing streaks still. In the Elite Eight, I do agree. I didn't think that if it was going to be an SEC team left, it wasn't going to be Arkansas with the way Alabama had been playing. Everybody still got the Zags winning the whole thing. BJ, shout out to Juwan Howard, man. I mean, it's hard for a guy who's meant so much to his school want to come back, because to me that's the doom. Like, hey man, don't go back and coach your old school. It's not gonna go well. I think his son is on the team. His son is getting like FaceTime at the end of the game, from Jalen Rose and those guys. I just think that, number one, when Warren Buffett came out so many years back, I would give somebody $1 billion for a perfect bracket. That lets you know nobody's gonna have a perfect bracket. It's not gonna have to. Thanks a lot, Illinois. Y'all just shut that down from the jump. But I've liked all the games, BJ. I think at the end of the day, Kevin was like, just go choke. Nope, that's not gonna work either. I mean, there is no strategy to having a perfect bracket. But BJ, I'm not gonna talk about where I am. I mean, Mama B is number one in the bracket. When producer Jim's sister was in it, she won the bracket. So I guess the key is your family members. People that have nothing to do with our profession outdo us. Because BJ, you know what Mama B did? She didn't overthink it. She did like a test. She ain't know. Just put him in. I like this team's colors. I like this team's location. And here she is, number one. So all that overthinking, Kevin doesn't even give his strategies anymore because he's not winning. Like, if Kevin was winning, he would probably tell you what's up. But
I think the real problem is a lot of people have taken my strategy, and that is really what is most propelling them by me. People take your idea and then use it against you.
Oh, so you're saying people are being more you than you now, and that's pushing you down the rankings.
I would think that's a fair argument. I would make that argument.
When in doubt, blame the fan. Kevin, like, listen, I've given away two. Kevin was like, listen, man, when it comes to what I do, I've given away the recipe. And now they just dibbing and dabbing, adding a little stuff to it. But no, shout out to Mama B. I'm just happy at the fact that Mama B is beating BJ. So
that is the one saving grace of this tournament, Ben. That's the only thing I got going for me. Is that it?
I mean, look,
but I'm beating y'all, and she's also beating y'all. So
that's all I care about.
Exactly. She's beating you. You were gonna beat me regardless. I mean, get out of here.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out on this. I'm being told to wait, so I don't know. Well, we'll chat with Russell DeBasi of Savannah State offensive coordinator coming up here in just a little bit, and we'll talk about their big weekend as well. I think. Hold on a second.
They just called my mother, didn't they?
No, she apparently called us.
Great.
Is that who it is? Is that who it is?
We have a.
Well, he knows who's on the phone.
We have a local basketball legend on the show with us there, Kevin. One Joni Bennett.
Oh, there you go. All right, welcome to the show. And this, what do you need to say to your son, who you are thoroughly beating in the bracket, as well as the rest of us, but more importantly, your son?
That'd be it.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. Nothing else? No rubbing it in his face, no anything like that?
All right. Well, it's interesting because Christian and I talked about this, and Christian actually confirmed this in dialogue between he and I. Just because you get the pick right doesn't mean you made the right pick.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Right? Like when you look at historic upsets, picking a team that's a 28.5 point favorite to beat a team or underdog to beat the favorite is not the right pick. You make a pick based off the information you have. Sometimes the wrong pick can be confirmed and affirmed by a strange turn of events. So I don't know that the NCAA tournament bracket challenge is a direct reflection of singular basketball knowledge. Although I will say this, normally my mom's a football fan first, but she's been in on the basketball. I mean, look, she's been watching the ACC. She's been studying the ACC. Knows a lot about a number of teams out there. And look, she's a.
Are you trying to filibusters and not let your mom talk about how she's beating you in the bracket?
Oh, I thought she hung up. What I'm saying is, look, people. I've talked about this. I've written about it on Southern Pigskin before. My passion for sports comes from my mother.
Cut him off. Yes.
Look, my dad doesn't care about basketball. My brother and I are
one thing.
Oh, she's still there. Yeah.
This bracket. When I win this bracket, I will print it, frame it, come down to the station, and hang it on the wall for you all to enjoy.
Let's go.
There we go. I'm here for that.
I hope she closes it out. Now, listen, my mom knows a lot about sports, probably more than anybody in the family. So look, she knows what she's doing. All I'm saying is just because you're ahead of me in the standings doesn't necessarily mean you made the right pick.
Hey, it's okay. We're all losing. It's fine. Your mom is winning. Just accept it and let's move forward. Come on. What? Thank you, Jody, for calling in. We appreciate it. We got to step aside though. Thanks much. We'll come back. We'll talk some football. We have Coach Demasi, Russell Demasi, waiting to join us next. 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here on this Monday. Elite Eight action coming up later tonight. We'll have coverage for you starting at 7 p.m. But even though we are in March, still college football going on, BJ and Ben, and Savannah State. Obviously, we've followed along with them through the fall and trying to get their schedules worked out here in the spring. Played a game a couple of weeks ago over in Mobile. Finally got a home game this past Saturday, and they won it 85-0. Their first home game in over 500 days, and their offensive coordinator, Savannah State, Russell DeMasi, set to join us here on 3 and Out. Coach, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Hey, good guys. Always appreciate you having me and talking some Tiger football.
Hey, I guess everybody feels good after 85-0, right? I mean, what, you couldn't get 90 up there?
Anytime you win, man, it's a tough thing to do. Win a football game, you got to do a lot of things right. So we were just fortunate enough to be able to win. Our guys were pumped up to get there. One in the spring season. Yeah, it's going to be the end of the games we play. So ending with a 1-1 record is a lot better than 0-2. And I just know I'm excited for our guys. And a lot of people got to play, and a lot of people did a lot of good things and showed us some things we didn't know. So it was good evaluation for us as coaches. And again, just happy for the guys.
And you mentioned evaluation, Coach. I mean, big plays everywhere, yards everywhere, touchdowns everywhere. And I know you were able to play a lot of players. So much to evaluate. I mean, have you ever had a game where you have so much kind of good production from a number of different players to look back on and appreciate?
No, never that many people contributing to the football game. Like I think you guys talked to Coach Quinn, and he said, we've been on the other side of it when we're playing those Division I teams, and it's a lot better to be on this side. But we really got to get some guys in that hadn't played since high school, and that was the biggest thing. Guys that hadn't played in 500 days, what they do when the lights come on, and when you got to compete against a different jersey, and every mistake's a little bit more magnified. So really good evaluation. They got in the fire, and most of them did well. Really didn't see anything that wasn't happy with, and it's just one of those games. We preach to our guys it's about us, and we want them to execute that way every game. Not just against Middle Georgia, and hopefully they'll take that forward to the next time we play. Valdosta State September 5th.
And Russ, obviously, most of the time, being an offensive coordinator, I mean, you get to preach it to the players, day in and day out, week in and week out. When you're able to put together a performance like you guys had on Saturday, it's got to feel good to go back and watch the tape. But then you can go back and talk to the guys and tell them, while we still didn't play our best game, we ain't gonna get much closer to what we shown on Saturday.
No question. And better than anybody else, it's never good enough. And that's how you got to be if you want to keep on getting better. You can't just talk about the good things that happen. There was a lot of them, but you got to fix what needs to get corrected. If you don't do that, then, when a big game down the road, it's going to end up hurting you. So we try to keep it level-headed. Yeah, we have some laughs and good times after a win. It's a lot easier to watch that film after a win. But you gotta get them to understand that we can always be better. We can always execute better. We can protect the football better. And I think they're really receptive to that. They want to get better, and they're not just looking at it and just thinking about the good things either. They're interested in what they did wrong and how they can get it fixed so that they can be the best player they can possibly be.
And Russell, obviously, you guys got to finally play in Savannah. How cool was that just to, be able to play, not have to travel, though, but you can just be at home, relax, and say, hey, we get to go out there and play somebody that's not wearing the same helmet as us and get to do that inside TA Wright Stadium there?
It was awesome. There's nothing like playing for the home fans and playing in Savannah and, what we think is one of the best Division II stadiums there is out there. Being in front of the people that, you love, it made it really special too. I mean, the guys got to have their fans there, or their parents there, their families, their friends. We had a few people as coaches, and then, there were some students there. Did a great job social distancing, but it really made a difference playing in front of somebody. That gives you a lot more excitement in the game. And, I just think people play different when you're playing in front of people, and especially the home crowd. So they were awesome. They were loud for 250, 300 people that were there. And we just really appreciate them coming out and supporting when they get the opportunity, because I know our guys have been waiting for it. And it was really special, and it was special to win that way too.
And Coach, you mentioned that local environment. How cool was it for a couple of the local running backs, Amin Stevens and Jordan Grant, to get into the end zone there in their hometown?
Awesome. And I think that was Jordan's first college touchdown ever. Amin scored a few just at a different place. For both of them to get in early on in the game and, really, show that physical style of running they both have. I mean, people look at Jordan as a little bit more finesse, but he's really powerful running the ball. He breaks a lot of tackles, and they both showed how physical they are and, what environment they grew up in here in Savannah and playing that type of football. And they're just really happy to see both of them get into it. I know their family and friends was too, and the whole team at that. They're great team guys. They haven't got the ball a lot. D'Angelo was out, our starting running back. So those guys had to step up, and that's what we preach, next man up. And they certainly lived up to the bill. And they're great for them. And like I said, got to go back and correct a few things with them too. And they're only going to get better, man. They're young. I think Amin's a junior and Jordan's a sophomore. So a lot of time ahead with those two, and I think they're going to be doing that pretty often.
And Russ, I mean, how much better are you as a coach now? We be talking about the fact that the players didn't have football for 500 some days. You as a coach wasn't able to be able to go out there and coach the game you love for 500 some days, to be able to stay the course, to keep having those guys get better. Obviously, having the seniors resonate you guys' message throughout the rest of the team. How much farther along are you as a coach, and now being able to persevere and kind of preach pages to yourself to be able to finally go out there and do what you love as well?
I mean, that's all we studied. That's all we talked about. We watch more film before a game than I have in my career because we had that much time. And I think it really puts it in perspective for us coaches. It's got to be fun. And I think that's the biggest thing I take away from it. I think you guys have seen my dad coach, and he's a fiery guy, and I feel like I'm the same way. I'm passionate out there. I try and make sure I'm correcting them and not demeaning them. But I really wanted to add a level of fun to it and not be upset when things go wrong, and really just calm them down and get them to, play the way we want. And ultimately, I think that's what's really changed for me is I have a lot more fun out there than I feel like I did in the past, just because it's so, rare and so precious, that game environment. And I just want to, be a support for the guys out there on Saturdays. We can coach, and we can coach hard in practice while making sure we're always correcting, but during the game, man, we got to lift them up and make sure they're heading in the right direction, so they're in the right headspace, to play the best they can play. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is making sure it's a fun environment out there on Saturdays for those guys and just enjoying the moment, because they haven't happened that often lately, and they don't happen that often at all time. 11 games a year. That's not like basketball playing 30 and baseball playing 50 to 60. There's not a lot of opportunity, so let's have fun when we get that opportunity. And I think that's where I've really changed.
Yeah, Russell Demasi joining us here, Savannah State offensive coordinator. And Russell, I know you guys only played 2 here in the spring, but speak to that. I know a lot of folks would look at it and say, well, I mean, you're moving mountains to try to play football. Why just 2 games? How much do you guys get out of just 2 games here in the spring, moving yourself forward? I mean, as a staff. What did 2 games as opposed to just saying, hey, we'll just wait till fall? How big of a difference does that make for your program?
I think it was huge. I think you can get rusty playing this sport. And in college football, there is no preseason. This was almost like a preseason for us, we feel like. A mini camp or a training camp where you practice against other teams. The games aren't necessarily going to count in the 2020 season, but, to get out and compete against somebody else and to really see how our guys reacted to that environment, that's what was invaluable for us. We can't produce. You try your best to get that environment in practice, and our guys do a great job. They compete at all times from the start of practice to the end of practice. But when you get to go against somebody else, that you don't see every day, there's a different competitiveness to it. And to see, who when they got thrown in the fire, who produced, who was calm, and who was making plays. And unfortunately, some people just don't react that way. Some people get under the lights and they get a little bit timid. And you got to find that out. You got to find that out and figure out who the best guy is to be on the field. Because that's what it's about, is putting the best guy out there that gives your team the chance to win. And that's what everybody wants. That's what everybody works for. So for us as coaches, that's exactly what we got out of it. And for our guys, just to, like I said, compete and fight against somebody else. That's a big deal. And it was fun to see Saturday. Unfortunately, the game before, we lost by 8, but we learned a lot about ourselves in that game. What we can do better. We can be more consistent offensively and do a few things better as a team. And we feel like that wouldn't turned out that way. And we got those things a little bit corrected. We saw improvement to Saturday, but nowhere near where we got to be at on September 5th.
I know some veterans on the roster, obviously, but what'd you see or what have you seen the last couple of weeks out of some of the young guys there on the offense?
Yeah, good. A lot of young offensive linemen played. We actually had a guy, a walk-on freshman from Vidalia, Georgia. Not a guy that we really was in the recruiting class as a local guy, but he's here. And he played, I think, 40 snaps at center, and he did an awesome job, man. He got in there, he battled. He was moving a guy that was way bigger than him. I don't know if you guys seen that film. They had a monster 6'11" defensive tackle, and Armstead's a good-sized guy, 6'3", but it looked awkward. But he was moving him off the football. He was communicating, and most importantly, his snaps were great. That's what we were. And he didn't even play center in high school. He played tackle in high school, so he's just learning position. Been here, did a great job in the fall, and really this spring has emerged as a guy in the offensive line that we can really count on. Local guy, we got to count him as a local guy. Jordan Grant getting in there, seeing him being the feature back was really good to see. Amin did a great job. We got local guys. Tony Thomas has been doing a great job out at receiver. We unfortunately didn't have Julian Roberts Saturday, but a guy from Pierce County, Clavian Bell, at tight end really has stepped up. He's a freshman, and we're really excited about the things he does. We want to get him the football a little bit more because he's exciting with the football in his hands, man. He makes people miss, and he can go score from a lot of different places. So we're really excited about him. And then all of our returns, I could talk about Enosh Carter and Devon, all the quarterbacks, Devon, JT, and Mason, they all played. Cole Donahue got in the game at quarterback from Islands. I mean, just local guys all over playing for their families. It was really cool to see. And they did a good job, and they're going to continue to get better. They're all really young. I think Devon's the only senior that I mentioned. Other than that, we've got a young core, young offensive line that we're really excited and learned a lot about these last 2 weeks, and definitely Saturday.
And Russ, man, I was going through my Twitter feed. I mean, looking at the score, I saw a guy. I don't know if you ever heard of him. A guy named Shannon Sharp said, "Hey, Alabama, y'all want this smoke this fall."
Oh man, he's trying to throw us in the fire. We're just anytime we get to compete against anybody, obviously that's against the rules for a Division II to play against a Division I team. But he's I'm glad to see him supporting, and he's a big part of why a lot of people they come back to Savannah State, because they know him and the way he supports the school. Whatever he gets us into, we're all in. We're behind him, so we'll plan on him seeing him there if that ever does happen.
Russell DeMasi, offensive coordinator, Savannah State, our guest here on 3 and Out. Russ, again, we would say congratulations. I mean, you only got 71 in the first half. I mean, come on. When are you going to crank the offense up?
Man, we need Go Kell back out there calling plays. And Ben, man, that was the best offense we ever had, was in the spring game where they were calling plays. Shoot, honestly, man, I don't know if y'all knew, we scored 4 or 5 non-offensive touchdowns. So that was a big part of that score being that way. I mean, shoot, we took the ball away, and we didn't just get the ball back for the offense. We were scoring, or we were getting the ball down inside the red zone, and luckily we capitalized in the red zone. But that's the reason why the score was that way. Credit to Middle Georgia, they fought the whole game, and they never gave up, and they had some plays in there where they made us look like we weren't so good. So we got to get that fixed. But like I said, let's get Ben and Go Kill out there if we want our offense to go any farther.
I'm sure they'll be hitting you up as soon as the show's over for their opportunity to run some plays. Coach, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, man, have a good one. I always appreciate it, you guys, and go Tigers.
Appreciate it. Russell DeMasi, our guest here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin radio network. We had a quick chance for a quick phone call here. Let's go to who's it? Corey on line 1. Corey, welcome to 3 and Out.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Good. How's it going, man?
Hey, I'm a first-time caller, long-time listener. Just happy to be talking to you guys. Just got a quick question for you, though.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, so how do you feel about those Razorbacks tonight? I got big money on the Razorbacks.
How do you? I think I had
Kevin,
them in my Final Four, but that's not saying much given where my bracket is right now.
Kevin, hold on. We have caller ID, and he said his name's Corey, but I have a sneaking suspicion this may be the sports director for WSAV.
Yeah. You got me, bro. You got me.
Out. Hey, why'd you do that?
What's up, Andrew?
I'm just playing. But Arkansas, loving the Razorbacks tonight. Feel like we got a good.
Hey, I would love it if Razorbacks win. It would help my bracket out in a big way. We got to step aside. Cody is about to punch me in the head. You go to break. We'll come back. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Jake Roos, UGAsports.com, will join us coming up top of next hour. We'll also hear from John Shipley of Jaguar Report. We'll talk to him about the Jags and their draft coming up in hour number 2 as well. But BJ, a tough weekend, not because of your bracket and your Sweet 16 Seminoles going down to Michigan, but no Olympics for U.S. men's soccer.
Yeah, I know you're happy about that.
Devastated.
Look, shout out to Honduras. Played really well. I watched a good portion of the finish to that game. I think they've made it 3 or 4 cycles in a row. So a really good program there. But yeah, disappointing. And I don't think the U.S. has been in the Olympics on the men's side since like 2000. I don't want to say, but it's been a couple of. I don't know if it's like 2008, 2000, but it's been a couple of cycles. Maybe 2008 was the last time. So a disappointment. You lose 2-1. You got down 2-0. You were able to get a goal early in the second half, but not able to rally. And yeah, later this summer, you will not have the U.S. men's team in the Olympics. Missed out on that opportunity, but congratulations to Honduras.
I mean, BJ. So what's worse? Losing to Tokyo. Was it Tokyo?
Tokyo's where the Olympics will be there. Yeah.
Is that who we lost to not get in?
I think the game that was played was played in Mexico.
We're doing congrats to Honduras. That's what we're doing.
That's what BJ's doing.
Dude, they played better. They played better.
No, get out. This is Sports Talk Radio. The hell, everybody needs to be fired that's associated with the U.S. men's national team.
Now and forever. I don't know who the coach is, so I don't want people to lose their job. Hour 2 next. Hour 2 here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. So much to get to here on the show. We're streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com as well. Also find us online at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can catch us here on the show. This hour, we'll chat with John Shipley, Jaguar Report. We'll look at the Jags and their draft. Also have a great story now involving Christian, BJ, and Ben. Since you are not in physical studio, it is truly up there with some of the all-time 3 and Out oops that we've ever had. So I will share that with you later this hour on the show. But first, let's talk some Georgia football here from UGAsports.com. Jake Cruz joins us here on 3 and Out. Jake, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you guys for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on and joining us. Obviously, a big weekend, big week for Georgia on the recruiting front today. A 4-star running back, Jordan James, out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Let's start there. How big of a grab is that for Georgia, who continues to just stockpile running backs?
Yeah, I love the pickup of Brian James. I think that he's a kid who, it's a great compliment piece. I think, after going with one running back in last year's class in Lavassier Carroll, I think that you're going to see Georgia go for two guys. Jordan Bryant James, a guy that chased from the beginning, have been on him for multiple months at this point. And he's been pretty clear that they're the leader in the clubhouse. We're the leader in the clubhouse. So not a huge surprise to see him go ahead and pull the trigger today. But, like I said, a nice complimentary back. I think he's kind of a little bit of a do-it-all guy, can catch out of the backfield, has some bursts and suddenness to his game. Overall, I really like what the kid brings to the fold.
And Jalen Walker, a versatile outside linebacker, commits, I believe, yesterday as well. What type of player are the Dogs getting in him?
Boy, I love what they got in that young man. I mean, you're talking about a Rivals 100 talent there. A guy, one of the best players in the nation when you're talking about Walker. I think it remains to be seen necessarily where he'll end up positionally, inside, outside. I don't think it matters much, though. This is a kid one thing that really stands out to me when I watch his game is his patience. He's a guy who really stays home, does his assignments, and then is able to, utilize some of his speed and his solid form tackling to track guys down. Overall, just a tremendous body type too. At 6'3", 220 pounds. I think he's a guy they're going to be able to pack a little bit more weight onto. Big pickup there for the middle of that defense.
And Jake, obviously, this time last week or maybe a week and a half ago, George Pickens goes down. You know what you got in Burton. You know what you got in Kearis Jackson. Who are some names that's going to fill that void, besides those guys?
Yeah, I think Burton's probably the guy you're looking to first just because of what he was able to do last year, certainly. And obviously, Kearis has that game experience under his belt. But I think everybody's going to be looking forward to getting Dominic Blaylock back into the fold here. How does that affect things? And then, what does an expanded and whole season look like for Arian Smith? Is he able to make a big impact? We saw him definitely have some flashes last year when he was on the field, but is he able to go out there and continue that same success with more playing time under his belt? I'm not going to say that there's any replacement for George Pickens. There's certainly not. He's as special a player as the Bulldogs had on their roster, but at the same time, I will say this is a much deeper wide receiver room than the Bulldogs have had in previous years. So that does soften the blow just a tad.
We're talking with Jake Cruz, UGAsports.com. So spring practice continuing on. What are, outside of the wide receiver room, what are the big areas that Kirby Smart is looking at here as we start to work towards the middle portion?
Well, I think it's certainly the defensive backfield. I know that there's so much has been made of that and what, who's going to be in, who's out. Who's going to find their way into the rotation at the cornerback spot. I feel like Keely Ringo, everybody's got him penciled in for a spot, but that second spot's going to be really interesting. I think right now Amir's kind of looking like the guy who's got the edge there. Definitely not riding off his chances. Jalen Timber pushing very hard. The freshman Nyland Green also there. And then you've got an intriguing flip in the fact that they moved Lavassier Carroll over from running back, and now they got him playing back there as well. a kid with a lot of speed, and a lot of teams thought that potentially he slotted back there into the defensive backfield. Be interesting to see how that experiment works for Georgia right now. But, I think that they're comfortable with the options that they have. I think that you have to feel good about the fact that they haven't been scrambling, it feels like, in the transfer portal. So that secondary, definitely a question, but some good options, as I said.
I was going to say, it seems like Georgia really, really trusts the players they have there. When you think about, some of the talented names, some of the, obviously recruiting accolades these guys have brought to Athens, even though it's largely a full reset in the secondary in terms of the depth chart and players moving on to the next level. Just how talented is this next wave of defensive backfield playmakers for Georgia?
Yeah, it's big. I think that there's a lot of talent back there. And I think that another thing you have to give these guys a lot of credit for is that you've seen Georgia pretty much year in and year out spin these recruiting spots on extra defensive backs. When they've got a chance, they'll take an extra guy. I mean, it really has been that case, whether that's been Deron Branch or whether that's been a Major Burns. These guys kind of coming in at the last minute of the recruiting cycles. They've taken some flyers on some guys, and I think they trust their evaluations. They feel good about the guys that they have. These are certainly all their guys. They recruited all these guys. And, overall, I think that they feel like they've done a good job stacking that room and putting it into a good position to make some plays later down the field for them.
And Jake, obviously, as BJ mentioned, that secondary is going to be really, really good as far as coming in. You're replacing everybody in the secondary from the previous year. How much more pressure is that going to put on that front seven? Specifically the D line.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of pressure there for sure. I think that there's no doubt the expectation there is huge for them. Luckily for them, they're an experienced group. What the secondary is lacking in experience, the front seven has a lot of, and I think that that's a huge benefit for Georgia. You're talking about Jordan Davis, a bona fide star up there, Jalen Carter, a guy who emerged up there. You've certainly got a guy like Devontae Wyatt, who's got experience under his belt. Trevon Walker's in the mix there. There's just a number of guys on that defensive line. And then you move into that second level of it with the linebackers. Nakobe Dean's a guy with a lot of snaps under his belt. Quay Walker, same story. Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith. It's not a question of experience in that front seven for Georgia. So really a huge boost to them because they've got to account for that secondary lack of experience.
Jake Roos, UGAsports.com, joining us here on 3 and Out. And we talked about the receiver room earlier, Jake. Obviously, JT Daniels working to try to find that cohesion with his receiver unit. I guess maybe one of the more untalked about stories potentially of spring. We know JT Daniels is the guy. Who's number 2? And depending on how that shapes out, what does that mean post-spring in terms of, as a guy maybe fall down to 3 or 4 in the depth chart, think about transferring?
Yeah, that's really what I think you've got to be watching for is, how the rotation ends up shaking itself out. I'll tell you, it doesn't look like it's going to be as clear as maybe we all thought it would be with Brock Vandagriff being number 2. What I've heard is that Carson Beck has taken some big steps forward. People are really high on the progression he's made over the course of the last year. Feel like he's come into this spring, well prepared and is executing, looking crisp and reminding people why he was a top 250 prospect in the nation coming out of high school. So, maybe not as clear as it once was who would be the number 2 there. I think that, probably the guy to watch if you're looking maybe at the possibility of a transfer would be a guy like Stetson Bennett. He's popular in the room and certainly has transferred back and forth, but, he's a guy with experience under his belt. Probably there are teams out there who would love to have a guy who could win some SEC games. So I think that Stetson's a guy to continue to watch depending on how the depth chart ends up shaking itself out.
Of course, Georgia opens with Clemson, which may be the game of the year in terms of the regular season in college football. Is there a different kind of energy or tone to spring practice because of that, or have the coaches kind of compartmentalized this thing, and is that not even a factor at all?
Yeah, I don't think it's much of a factor, to be honest with you. I think that they've really done a good job of kind of preparing the guys for this moment. You're talking about a squad at this point that's got a lot of guys who played in a lot of really big games, a lot of national games, big time stages. So I don't think it's a situation where you're going to catch a lot of guys who are overwhelmed by that moment or necessarily, taken aback by it. They realize what's on the line. They're more than clear about that. And I think that that's something that Georgia coaches have done a great job preparing them for and having them adjust to these large stages as well.
Jake, obviously, I mean, JT Daniels is definitely going to lead the way with that receiving core, but you keep on, you got a boatload of backs. I mean, it's because it's in the spring, or is Micah going to kind of let the offense dictate what's going to lead the way, or they're going to say, look, we're going to let the offense we're going to let the passing game kind of open up for the running game this year?
You know, I think that they want to stick with what they do, and certainly that's the run game first. I think that, that's what they want to do to establish themselves. And, I don't think that you'll see them be quite as stubborn on it as they have perhaps in the past. But I do think that they realize that's the bread and butter of this program. They've got a history of these great backs. They just added another great back today on the commitment list. So, Kirby Smart wants to play that smash mouth, control the game football, certainly. I don't think he has any hesitation or reservations about opening things up with the pass game just because of the way the game has evolved. But, I think that they will stick to that, use that to dictate it a little bit. But I don't think that you'll see them necessarily as run heavy as you have in the past. I do think that we'll see a very heavy dose of the pass game this year.
Jake Roos joining us here on 3-and-Out, UGAsports.com. And Jake, obviously, Georgia, we started off with it a great last couple of weeks of recruiting, I believe up to number 2 behind Ohio State. How do you see them closing out maybe before you get to August or continuing to move forward? How good could this class potentially wind up being 2022?
Yeah, it's going to be, a race for number 1. I think Georgia's in the mix with some major targets still down the stretch here. So it's going to be interesting to see how things continue to progress over the course of the next month or so. Mostly because I think you're going to see guys start to pull back a little bit in terms of this in terms of this commitment excitement, because it looks like visits are going to resume soon. It looks like you're going to have maybe guys getting back on campus possibly in that, early part of June. I know that's what everybody's got circled on their calendar anyway. So if that ends up being the case, I think you'll see these guys get on the road. Maybe things pick back up over the course of the summer. But for right now, I think it may get a little bit quieter than it has been just because guys are waiting on that opportunity to see places in person for the first time in well over a year.
Jake Roos, UGAsports.com, our guest here on 3-and-Out. Jake, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. And Georgia going through the middle of spring practice right now and got 3 big recruits all within the last week, including Jordan Bryant James, a running back out of Murfreesboro, Tennessee, 4-star running back there. We'll come back, switch gears, talk a little NFL. John Shipley, Jaguar Report, will join us. Did Urban Meyer give us a little certainty with what the Jags might do at number 1, and where do they go the rest of their draft? He'll join us next. It's 3-and-Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you were with us here on this Monday. Elite Eight basketball for you coming up tonight, 7 o'clock. We'll have coverage for you starting then as, again, the brackets starting to get whittled down. Mine not looking too good. BJ, apparently yours looking real good, but your mom's bracket looking a whole lot better than all of ours at this point as well. So we'll get to that coming up later in the show. But first, we are inching towards the NFL draft, and could we get a better idea or maybe a solidified idea of what the Jags are going to do there at number one? Our next guest here to help us out with that from Jaguar Report, John Shipley joins us here on 3 and Out. John, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, guys, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, as always.
Hey, we appreciate you coming on and joining us. I know Peter King put out a quote from Urban Meyer in reference to drafting Trevor Lawrence. That's certainly the direction we're headed. I mean, is this the worst kept secret ever? Is that pretty much a sure thing that the Jags and Trevor Lawrence are just waiting until a media appropriate time to say that's who the pick's going to be?
Yeah, no, ever since the Jaguars locked up the number one pick all the way back in December, before Urban Meyer was even the head coach, Trevor Lawrence was going to be the number one pick. It really didn't really matter what happened between then and April. But Urban Meyer becoming the head coach, that only made it more of a sure thing, at least in my opinion, just because he's somebody who has, kind of studied and been enamored with his game as long as he has. I mean, we've had 3 pro days of the top 4 quarterback prospects so far, and the only one Meyer has gone to has been Lawrence's. He skipped Zach Wilson's, and he went to, I believe, the Players' Championship at Sawgrass over going to North Dakota State and Trey Lance's pro day. So I think, like you said, the worst kept secret, if it's even a secret at this point, I think everybody in the NFL and everybody in the Jaguars building knows that, it's basically just business as usual right now, and it's all beneficial.
So what about, John, after Lawrence? I mean, you've seen, I guess, arguments made for positions of need, whether it's maybe a Barmore at defensive tackle or one of the defensive end prospects or a Freiermuth at tight end. Does Jacksonville have targets at 25, or are they comfortable taking best player available?
At this point, I think they're comfortable taking best player available. They found so many players, through free agency. They really went through a strategy of filling out the depth on the roster so that they're not really pigeonholed into taking any one position, come around draft day. So I think they're going to go best player available. It wouldn't shock me if, say, they picked an offensive lineman at 25 who doesn't even start year one, because I think that they know this is more than just a, 1-year rebuild, and this is a team that really needs help all across the board, not just at quarterback. So, obviously the number 1 pick is the most important pick, but the number 25 pick, that's a crucial one as well. And yeah, I think it's one of the tougher picks to kind of peg in that range, just because they have so many needs that there's very few positions you can kind of strike off there.
And John, I mean, I know one big need for the Jags is going to be interior D lineman help. And when you look at this division, obviously no one's really afraid of Houston right now. You're going to have to be able to deal with Carson Wentz at the end, and you got to be able to stop tackle number 22 in Tennessee. How much is this division setting up for the Jaguars to, in year one under Urban Meyer to start, making a name for themselves early?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, the best thing really for the Jaguars is that the 2, best quarterbacks from the division last season. Now, one of them's retired in Phillip Rivers, and the other one, Deshaun Watson. One, we all know his situation with asking for a trade, but then he now also, has this current situation going on with, the allegations against him. So I think just looking at the fact that the AFC South is already kind of watered down at the quarterback position, there's a very real chance that, Trevor Lawrence can be the second best quarterback in the division early on behind Ryan Tannehill if, Carson Wentz isn't able to recover, from his struggles last season. So I think the Jaguars are in a decent position for the division this season. I think, they're in a good spot to at least finish ahead of the Texans and compete with the Colts or the Titans. But I still think they're a year away from really, making a run for a division title.
John Shipley joining us from Jaguar Report. And John, I know BJ asked you about the rest of the draft and what the Jags could possibly do with some of their other picks. What insight, if any, have you gotten into kind of what to expect from Urban Meyer as far as draft philosophy? All I've read is, hey, we want to get faster. Well, I mean, every coach says that. What do you kind of expect from Urban Meyer when it comes to the draft in terms of how he utilizes it here for the first time?
I think he's going to go after players who, have really career track records of success and production. I don't think he's going to take, any swings on projects or anything like that. I think he wants players who dominated their competition at whatever level they're at, whether it's Division I, FCS, Division II, wherever they're at. So I think he's really going to look for players with a career track record in production. And I think that they're going to look for players who really are experienced and dependable, because they're going to have so many of their rookies to play impact roles early on that I don't think they're going to be wanting to draft many players who, had just a handful of starts throughout their college careers.
I know you could say everywhere, and that kind of fits the best player available model, but covering the team like you do, what are the most pressing, I guess, positions of need as Jacksonville enters the draft? Let's say outside of quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you look at the tight end position, and they added a free agent tight end in Chris Manhertz, who is truly one of the better blocking tight ends in the league, but he has 12 career receptions in 70 games, and he's currently their tight end 1. So I think a pass-catching tight end has to be near the top of the list, even though the draft is a bit scarce in that area. And then after that, I think you once again have to look to the defensive line, especially after Tyson Alualu opted to not sign the Jaguars after coming to initial agreement with them. He was projecting, at least in my eyes, as a likely starter in week 1. So they have to find a defensive lineman to kind of fill that void that's left on the depth chart. And then they need a playmaker at safety badly. Gerard Wilson's a solid player. Rayshawn Jenkins was a solid player for the Chargers last year. They don't really have an alpha dog, at the safety position. They don't have somebody who offenses really have to game plan against. And then offensively, I think some speed at receiver and some speed at running back are probably their two biggest needs on that side of the ball. They obviously need offensive line depth, but, I believe that could probably be said for every team in the NFL. And they seem like a team that's content with their starting 5 offensive linemen in 2021. So I'd say finding a speed threat at receiver and a more explosive running back to kind of add to that room to go James Robinson and Carlos Hyde would be big needs as well.
And John, how important is it going to be to add another running back in the draft? I mean, I know they got Robinson. I know it went out there and got Hyde because you got a guy in Trevor Lawrence who's already coming into the league with a major injury, even though he's going to be coming off an injury. I know he got the big arm, but you're going to want to try to protect him as much as you can if he's definitely going to be the starter day 1 as a rookie.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they're going to make it a goal. And I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they drafted a running back at number 33, whether it be Najee Harris from Alabama or, Travis Etienne, Lawrence's teammate from Clemson. I really think that they like James Robinson and they value his skill set, but I'm not sure he's the home run threat that, Urban Meyer kind of values. I think that they're going to be looking to add a more explosive kind of runner at the position one way or another, whether that's early in the draft or if you're adding a pass-catching guy later on. I mean, they already know that they want to get more explosive at the position earlier this offseason, but the only move they've made since then is sign Carlos Hyde, who, while a solid player, isn't exactly an explosive rusher. So I think that they're going to make it a priority, and like I said, I wouldn't be surprised to see it be the pick that kicks off the second round.
Finally, are the Jaguars going to trade Gardner Minshew? And if so, what do they think they can get for him?
I don't think they're going to trade Gardner Minshew because I don't think they're going to get any offers that really tell them that it's worth going into the season with C.J. Beathard as your backup. I think signing Beathard gives them flexibility because now they can at least trade Minshew, and now that they have a backup with some NFL experience who isn't Jake Luton. But I think ultimately the Jaguars will see that having Minshew as a reliable, cost-controlled insurance option is more valuable than what you can probably get for him on the trade market, which at this point is likely, a 5th-round pick probably at best.
John Shipley, Jaguar Report, our guest here on 3 and Out. John, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, guys. Hope you all have a great week.
Will do. Thanks so much. John Shipley joining us here from Jaguar Report. Jags, of course, have the number 1 pick in the draft. BJ and Ben and Urban saying, well, that's the direction we're heading. And I think it's the probably worst kept secret in the NFL of who the number 1 pick's going to be.
Clearly. I mean, we've known for a while that Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy. Where I think it gets intriguing, and I thought, Kevin, your question about what is Meyer's philosophy kind of gave some insight into what we might see in the draft with John's answer there. What happens after 1? Because Jacksonville has the 25th pick in the first round. They obviously have the first pick of the second round. They have pick 45 in the second round, and then they have the first pick of the third round. So I think the way that works out is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the top 65 picks, or 63 picks, 64, whatever it is. They have a lot at the top. And I think you can get guys who are going to start and be impact players right away. And to hear John say, look, Meyer wants guys that have had heralded college careers that aren't necessarily quote, project guys. I mean, he even mentioned, could you take Najee Harris or Travis Etienne potentially in round 2? Based on what John said, some of the other stuff I've read, I think once you get past 1, don't be surprised if Jacksonville takes a good hard look at Pat Freiermuth, the tight end out of Penn State. Maybe they feel like Brevin Jordan, who had a good pro day today out of Miami, could be their guy. I think they will look heavily along the defensive line. You have great defensive end options there. Even once you get into the second round, a Joe Asai, a Ronnie Perkins, a Peyton Turner, a couple Patrick Jones, a Rashad Weaver out of Pitt. I mean, I think there are a lot of options there. Along the interior of the defensive line, Ben, I mean, you're going to be able potentially, once you get past the first round, Tyler Shelvin, Marvin Wilson, guys like that could be able to come in and play right away. So I think it's always good to have a lot of picks at the top of the draft. But I think in this draft especially, boy, that is very valuable to have the number of picks the Jags do at the top.
Yeah, but the thing I do appreciate is the fact that, BJ, you got to remember. I know you looking forward to this draft, but your star quarterback is coming in off an injury. Most quarterbacks, they deal with the injury bug once they get to the NFL. You're dealing with a guy that's dealing with his major injury coming into the league. I told you, it's not a matter of if, when he gets hit. How much do we limit him getting hit? You want to be able to let the running game. I mean, kind of what he's used to. I know we talk a lot about what he did in Clemson. He would have took less hits if they would have just handed the ball off to Etienne. Etienne did, less with more. If you can get a chance to get two guys who just spent the last, 3 years with each other in the same backfield, and they already know each other's mannerisms, Travis Etienne's about as good as it can be. And you got a guy that don't defer being a superstar to a guy like Trevor Lawrence. I think that will be huge, and Najee Harris will be even better.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll take 3 when we return, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you were with us here on this Monday afternoon. We've got Elite Eight basketball coverage for you coming up a little bit later tonight. We'll have it starting at 7 p.m. Hope your bracket is still hanging in there. Mine is, I don't think it's even in there. It's just there. So we'll see what happens. I got one team that can salvage it for me, and even that may not be good enough to get the job done. But that being said, we've talked to Jake Roos. We've talked to John Shipley. Now let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. Cody was sitting here. Cody was watching my wonderful takes. Just totally enamored with the way I was talking.
Cody, tell him what you're doing.
I was doing a mock draft.
Mock drafting. Not paying attention. All right. Take 1. Speaking of the tournament, BJ and Ben, UCLA lost 4 games in a row entering the NCAA tournament. They now have won 4 games in a row. I think they're the second team to come out of the play-in game and make the Elite Eight. VCU was the other. How impressive has their run been?
It's amazing, given that Ben was talking trash about how they weren't even in the tournament and weren't a real tournament team.
They played their way in.
No, they're a team that made the tournament, and they've been playing very good basketball. Now, that game against Alabama was wild. I mean, that was something. But look, UCLA is a very talented team, obviously. And I've said this about other programs as it pertains to football. I think most specifically Miami. You know, college football is better when you have teams like Miami who are good. I think about UCLA and just all the history, all the tradition, all the success. I know a lot of people have said, hey, man, I'm a little disappointed that March Madness and then certainly the advanced rounds of the tournament, you don't have the Kentuckys and the Dukes and the Carolinas and the Kansas. Dude, UCLA is here. Like that's an amazing story, especially given how they finished the regular season. UCLA is as good as it gets from a history and tradition standpoint. I think Ben mentioned this earlier in the show. I think they're just another example of how incredible the Pac-12 has been. I mean, this has been a remarkable, historic NCAA tournament for that conference. So, look, UCLA has shown they can play with anybody. They've shown they can win games a variety of different ways, which I think is impressive. I know we talk about free throw shooting and turnovers and rebounding. The biggest key in the big dance may be, can you win games however you have to win them? You know, some teams are good in high-scoring games. Some teams are good in low-scoring games. Some teams are good up-tempo. Some teams are good half-court. UCLA just wins, man. That's what they've done. It doesn't matter what style of game it is, even a back and forth. You know, I mean, they very easily could have lost in overtime after Alabama's rally back. And they were tremendous in overtime. So, yeah, shout out to UCLA. Absolutely.
It's very impressive, BJ, because of what I be always telling you. I know you're a numbers guy. I know you're an analytics guy. That stuff goes out the window when you talk about getting into the tournament. The tournament is just make it in. Because and then it's can I just do what I do a little bit better and limit you to what you do? That's what UCLA is. And then you talk about the Pac-12. The Pac-12 was the ACC this year. You could argue say that was the best conference of basketball this year in college. You know, in college, and you look at how many teams are still left. I mean, Oregon, I think, won the freaking Pac-12. UCLA is a team that lost 4 games coming into the tournament, and they found a way to get in, BJ. And the thing is, as you mentioned, I know I'm talking to people born in the 90s, early 2000s. They don't know about how great UCLA. When you talk about the greatness of college basketball, UCLA, oh my God, it would take a whole week of shows to talk about how great they were. But yes, it's very impressive because UCLA is showing, look, you scratch and claw to get in. And once you get in, you do whatever you got to do to make it to the next game. Shout out to Alabama for taking them to the brink, shooting that 3 to take it to overtime. Alabama superseded expectations, but I think UCLA just proved once again that they're still a basketball school. In Alabama, well, y'all still got Nick Saban.
Yeah, don't feel too bad for them.
Yeah.
They'll be fine. But moving along, take 2, based on what other first-round trades have earned this year, what is the minimum you think the Falcons should accept from somebody in order to move back in the draft?
Yeah, I think that's a question you kind of have to talk out with specific examples, right? Because if you're going to move back into the 20s, you would require a different return than if you were to move back to, say, 5 or 6 or 7. If you're talking about moving back into the second half of the first round, which I am not opposed to because I think there's such depth here, I think you're talking about probably a first and a second at least with another mid-round pick, like a third or a fourth at least, kind of being the status quo, and that's why there's such value, right? If you're Atlanta now, if Fields is your guy and you feel like, hey, we got to get Fields, and I understand that because maybe you're not going to be, or you don't want to be in this position a number of different times. Maybe you feel like extra picks isn't worth the missed opportunity of not having a signature star quarterback, even if it's somebody that's going to be on the bench potentially. But if you were to trade back into, the 20 to 25 range, you would obviously be getting that first round pick. You would obviously be getting, I would assume, at the very least, either multiple seconds or a first and a second. And I'm not necessarily talking about this year. Not everybody has multiple first round picks to trade. But if you were to trade, 5 to say, I don't know, Ben, your Tennessee Titans, you would get their pick in the early 20s. You would probably get a future first round pick and maybe a second or third for this year. And then what you're able to do with that is potentially go from maybe drafting 2 or 3 starters to drafting 4 or 5 starters based on the draft capital you have. So I'm always open to the idea of trading back, maybe based on traditional returns. The 1 or 2 trade backs scenarios may not be worth it, where let's say, Cincinnati, for example, falls in love with Penei Sewell and he's there and they go, we got to trade up to get him. I don't think you would be getting, you would obviously get, the 5th pick, but I don't think you would be getting necessarily another first round pick or even a second round pick guaranteed to move back 1 spot. And if you're, talking about maybe you wanting a Sewell or you wanting a Fields, that probably wouldn't be worth it. But I do think the return on investment for trading way back, where you're talking about multiple spotlight picks, is often very much worth it.
I think the Falcons should not do anything. If they trade and stand in the top 10, I think it's worth getting adding a higher second round pick and a first round pick in 2022. The Falcons need a lot of help. They have the only team that should be trading back in the 20s is a team that don't need no help. They think about this. Look at what San Francisco did. San Francisco and Terry Fontenot is one of the best GMs in the NFL. So they said, all right, we got our eyes set on 2 teams. We want to add multiple picks next year. First round picks down the line and picks this year. They got a 3rd round pick. They went down to number 12 and moved back up to number 6. If you Terry Fontenot and you say to yourself, okay, if I'm not going to get a quarterback, you got a lot of skill position guys because they're probably going to go skill. I don't think they're going to go defensive line, BJ. I think they're going to go skill position guys. So when you look at the skill, Kyle Pitts, top 10. Jalen Waddle, top 10. Devonta Smith, top 10. DeMar Chase, top 10. Those guys are going to be there still in the top 10. The Falcons have shown they need starters this year, so you get a higher second round pick, and you get, and I think, a minimum of multiple. Because the number 3 ended up getting 2 first round picks. That ain't got nothing to do with what they did with Philly. You got to at least get 2 first round picks in 2022, 2023, and add a 3rd rounder at worst. Because you need multiple starters in this draft. So if Atlanta ain't trying to go quarterback, and one of those skill guys is going to be there, trade back into the top 10, and look at that look at that John Lynch, San Francisco 49ers blueprint.
All right, moving along. Take 3. Speaking of the draft, which Southern Pigskin area prospect, obviously SEC, ACC, Sun Belt, is not getting enough draft attention? Christian said Kylan Hill. SoCon, if you have a nominee there as well. I know BJ probably does, but go ahead.
No, I like the Hill pick. Very good player. To me, this goes back to a guy that we all know, we've all seen, and has been an All-American. But for whatever reason, depending upon the projections, sometimes you see him listed as like a 3rd or 4th round pick, and you almost never see him listed as a 1st round pick. And that's Trey Smith out of Tennessee. And like when I see Trey Smith, I see a 1st round pick. I don't even know what the counter argument is for him to not be a 1st round pick. And I even say that in an elite draft in terms of great talent and depth like what we have here. Trey Smith is big, athletic, strong, smart, proven, physical. Every single thing you want from an offensive lineman, it's Trey Smith. He's probably going to be a guard at the next level, but we saw him play a multiple kind of position rotation early in his career at Tennessee. And Ben, I know you always talk about the value of being able to play multiple positions. Trey Smith, if you need him, can play every position except center on the offensive line. and probably do so at a successful level. You're talking about a guy coming out of the SEC that went up against, the best Alabama had to offer, the best Florida had to offer, the best Georgia had to offer. I think this guy is a bona fide stud, a superstar. Then we saw him play in person down in the Tax Slayer Bowl a couple of years ago against Indiana. Great player, remarkable story. The NFL prototype for an interior offensive lineman. Again, probably projects as a guard. And Cody's doing the mock drafts. I mean, I've done some of the draft simulations where you have Trey Smith going in the 3rd round and the 4th round, and I'm like, that's crazy. And if he goes there, that's crazy. Trey Smith is an elite A+ prospect, and it's going to be a star in the NFL for a decade plus.
For me, when you talk about what Levante David and Devin White just put on the clinic in the Super Bowl, I think it's going to be Ernest Jones. Because the thing is, we getting back to the linebacker that just doesn't come off the field. You look at what they're trying to have all these hybrid this and hybrid. Hybrid just means I don't got a linebacker that can run and hit. Whenever I got a hybrid safety, that means I got a linebacker that cannot run and hit. Well, Ernest Jones, he can run, he can hit. He's going to have to learn how to drop back in coverage with confidence and come up and hit somebody. Tremaine Evans, look at what he does for the Bills. Fred Wagner, what he does for the 49ers. Roquan Smith for the Bears. Leighton Vander Esch, when he's not out there with the Cowboys, they don't get it done. Levante Davis, C.J. Mosley, Demario Davis. I just think that what I like about a guy like Ernest Jones, Kevin and BJ is the fact that, look, he's a play and plug guy. You talk about being a good player on a bad defense. Well, he's done that. You talk about a guy that doesn't let the scoreboard affect the way he plays. He does that. Levante David, and obviously it's going to be about who you pair him with. But I just think that when you look at what Ernest Jones brings to the table, a guy who has only gotten better since he's been, been at South Carolina, a guy that can definitely go out there, get these guys lined up, learn, doesn't come off the field, and your linebacker, just like your center on offense, your linebacker got to be your smartest player right there on the field. I think when you look at what Ernest Jones brings to the table, Darius Leonard out of South Carolina State, first team All-Pro as a rookie, because he was a play and plug guy. So I think when you look at what Ernest Jones brings to the table, big time competition, doesn't stray away, really, really violent with his hands, really, really plays with attitude. So give me Ernest Jones out of South Carolina.
That's take 3. We do it each and every day. This time we'll come back. More to come here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here on 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. A lot to get to in the final hour. We'll talk some college basketball. Braves baseball will be back coming up on Thursday as well. But before we step aside, BJ, I told you and Ben I had a wonderful story from earlier in the show. So we had a call from Corey who wanted to talk about Arkansas basketball, right? And Christian comes on and says, "Oh, we know who this is. It's he thought it was Andrew Goldstein with doing local sports there, WSAV. Turns out it's not who it was. It was actually Corey, trying to get his hot take on. So Corey, if you're listening, blame producer Christian for us cutting you off on a show. It's
wow. Wow.
Just to confirm, because again, I was just listening to all this from afar. Like I was ready to talk Arkansas basketball. Arkansas Baylor is going to be up and down tonight. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Christian came on and said, "We know who you are," and Corey's like, "I just want to talk Arkansas basketball."
Right. When he brought him on the show, and then he saw the caller ID. It said Andrew Goldstein, and I was like, "Well, sometimes caller IDs are wrong, man." And it's like they could be tied to different guy. And Corey's like, obviously that wasn't him. So he called the real. I say the real. I shouldn't even say that. He called the Andrew Goldstein we thought it was, and he was like, "No, that wasn't me." I'm like, Christian. So we just had Corey
hold on.
his Arkansas take on, and you're thinking it's an imposter call.
So they got so a longtime listener, dedicated listener, called in, and we called him the wrong name, and he accepts it. Yeah, it really is.
No, I guess he goes by Corey. He read the.
I mean, can we send Corey a shirt or something? Can we send him a gift card?
Corey, if you're listening, you feel free to call back, and we'll try to hook you up with something because that was bad. I mean, yeah, we got. We'll try to find something because, our producer thinking it was an imposter call, and all you want to do is talk Hogs basketball. Coming up with a big one tonight. We'll do that when we come back. 3 and Out. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us here. Final hour of the show on this Monday. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. But we got Elite Eight basketball coming up tonight. BJ and Ben is, again, 2021's college basketball tournament, I think, has been what you would expect from the 2021 college basketball tournament, right? Which is more chaos, more craziness. You've got a 12 seed going tonight with a chance to get into the Elite Eight. Houston, I don't think, has been in the Elite Eight since Clyde Drexler was on, or in the Final Four since Clyde Drexler and that bunch were together in Houston. You've got Arkansas, which I don't think has been in a Final Four since Nolan Richardson was their coach in quite a long time, and Baylor, who I don't know. I'm trying to think if they may not have ever been to the Final Four in like 60 years. So this is a historic night for two teams, regardless of who makes it in.
So many storylines. And you have Oregon State playing for a spot in the Final Four, and they weren't even going to make the postseason at all until they went on a run and won the Pac-12 tournament. And winning the Pac-12 tournament looks more and more impressive every single day. I mean, yeah, it's going to be amazing. I love all these teams. I love watching Houston play, who you mentioned. And, yeah, I mean, you think about the tradition of Clyde Drexler and Hakeem Olajuwon, back in the day. This is their best group since then. And they have a really kind of balanced, interchangeable roster. You think about positionless basketball. I know Houston's one of those teams that can do that. Gonzaga, their dominance has been really, really impressive. And could they be a team that finally gets that national championship? I know they've made it to the final. For a while, a couple of years ago, the talk was, well, they couldn't quite get to a Final Four. Well, they've made it to a Final Four. They've made it to a national championship game. Can they get that national title? You think about what Coach Drew has done with Baylor. They get up and down. They shoot the ball really well. A lot of interchangeable post players there. They're a fun team to watch. Ben mentioned it. I keep going back to Michigan. I mean, Michigan may be the story of the year in college basketball. When you think about Juwan Howard and all that he accomplished for that program, obviously not getting a chance to coach in the postseason last year, and now they're in the postseason. And Kevin, they might. I mean, Gonzaga's right there, but they might be the second most impressive team so far.
And BJ, Ben and I talked about this late last week. It was, I mean, the storylines for Michigan are insane. Not only for what you mentioned, but Juwan Howard there, his son on the team, but Juwan Howard of the Fab Five, who made the Final Four twice, yet have no banners hanging up in the rafters because that's been erased. How just ironic would it be if Juwan Howard gets his team to the Final Four and that's the banner that's up and not the one he played in or the two he played in?
And not only all that, but I believe Michigan has been without their second leading scorer during this whole tournament, who's going to miss the tournament, unfortunately, sadly, due to injury. So you're talking about a team, I mean, normally even for a 1 or a 2 seed, I mean, you take one of the top scorers away, that's extremely difficult to overcome. And, Michigan, I'm certainly not an expert on Michigan basketball, but watching them put it on Florida State yesterday, I mean, tremendous point guard play, great post play, very efficient from three, excellent movement of the basketball. Florida State's been a difficult team to match up with because of their length and athleticism and depth. And a lot of the commentary from the announcers talked about just how well prepared Michigan was. Normally when teams play Florida State and Florida State's switching and everybody out there is 6'7" or taller, teams get kind of overwhelmed by that offensively and they don't know how to counterpunch. Meanwhile, Michigan was so prepared for that. Howard and his staff did such an incredible job. They just handled it in stride. I mean, for the vast majority of that game, after the first couple of minutes, Michigan held a 10 or 15 plus point lead. And to do that against the Leonard Hamilton Florida State team in March, which has made 3 straight Sweet 16s, by the way, very impressive. So I agree with you guys. Juwan Howard, Michigan, probably the story of the tournament. Very impressed with them. And I think the potential we got to see, but the potential of a Gonzaga-Michigan Final Four matchup, my heavens. I mean, that would be special. I kind of feel like we need to do a whole segment on Arkansas, man, just because of the call thing. But look, man, Arkansas repping the SEC. They're playing up and down. They have great post play. Got some clutch performances, clutch shots made late to knock off the Cinderella Oral Roberts. This is a team with Coach Musselman that plays physical, wants problems down in the post, and that's kind of an old school mentality that I can appreciate. I love teams that want the ball in the paint, want the ball around the rim, want to get up and run, but if they got to get down there and battle, they can do that. Arkansas Baylor is going to be a lot of fun tonight.
I just think at the end of the day, BJ, what I like the most about the closer you get to the Final Four is the pressure is mounting for everybody because now it's gotten real. I ain't taking nothing away from the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight. Obviously, we talk about, everybody, having, Gonzaga is obviously everybody's, true number one, Kevin, who's supposed to win it all. Michigan got a former Michigan Wolverine. We all started learning about Michigan when it comes to the Fab Five. I do agree, Kevin. I hope that Juwan Howard keeps moving forward to put pressure on the alumni, to come back and say, look, man, can we forgive each other? The last time USC was good, I think they had OJ Mayo, and he was only like one and done at USC. Oregon State, people like, they got a basketball team? Yep, and we in the Elite Eight going up against Houston. Arkansas is waving. If Arkansas is telling Coach Calipari, we don't need the number one.
All right, hold on, Kevin. This is important. This is important. Ben, will you and all the other SEC legends, if Arkansas wins tonight, start chanting FCC?
Listen, now I talked to my mom, right? I like, Mom, Arkansas. She's like, oh, they're SEC school. Don't start that nonsense. Arkansas, this is Arkansas success. Think about Arkansas. Think about the SEC for a second. SEC, Coach Pearl, he was at Tennessee, go to Auburn, not in it. Alabama used to have Avery Johnson, didn't make it. And then Calipari's at Kentucky signing lifetime contracts. Who cares? Only one with AD, who got MVP for being a defensive threat. But I still think the Zags, BJ, gonna be hard to beat. Michigan plays with big men for real. Like, they got guys on Twitter saying they won't call anything. Yeah, because it's called, I don't know, being a big guy trying to get down low, playing with their back to the basket. But I still think, BJ, when you talk about this Baylor team, they won the Pac-12, which ended up being really, really good this year. I think it's going to – not Baylor, I'm sorry. I did it again, Kevin. I did the Pac-12.
No, they didn't.
Oregon State.
Oregon.
Yeah. I apologize. But I just think that when you look at this Elite Eight outside of Mama B knowing what nobody on this show knows, it's anybody's ball game, even though I think the Zags are the best team top to bottom, BJ, because they jump on you quick and they stay on you.
Now, we'll get some great games tonight. Oregon State, Houston, as BJ mentioned, Arkansas, Baylor. I got to have to stay up late, but that could be a fun one there tonight. Yes, the 9:50 tip with Baylor and Arkansas, but should be an up and down basketball game to keep you into it. I think this one could go down to the wire. Again, like we've seen some of these Sweet 16 games really came down to a shot or two. Arkansas, sometimes you get the scare put in you. Oral Roberts did that. You come back the next game and play a better, cleaner basketball game. I'll be interested to see what kind of effort Eric Musselman's squad give tonight. Not that it was poor against Oral Roberts, but you say, hey, a 15 seed almost sent us home. Now you got to turn around and play a number one seed. I think you'll see a real focused effort from Arkansas tonight against Baylor.
I think that's a good point. And you're kind of getting into my mathematical market correction type stuff where you had, I don't want to say a poor performance, but you had a performance where you were a play away from losing it against Oral Roberts, losing the game, and you get it done, and you kind of use the old survive in advance adage, and you think if you can play a more complete, balanced game, this could be one that goes down to the wire. On paper, you might think, hey, Baylor's been so good, number one seed. But Arkansas has a kind of a special toughness to them, a mental toughness, a physical toughness. I like the way they play, and I'm with you. I don't know that I can stay up for the whole thing. That is late. That is serious.
Not 9:50 tips. They use any reason to go to break. Hey, listen, man, somebody just sneezed. We'll be right back. I need y'all to. I am not built like I used to be, BJ. But Kevin said Kevin gets 3 late nights a year. And I think he watched the Korean Baseball League in 2020. So he still got 3 left. He's going to use one tonight.
No. Here's how you game plan for Elite Eight basketball like this is around 8:30. You just got to lay on the couch and go, give me about 45 minutes. And then you take an hour, sleep. And then when you wake back up, it'll be time for tip and you power through it. That's really the game plan. As I've gotten older, it's like you get the early evening nap. Then you can stay up way past bedtime and watch the late tips. That's how you got to do it. So, I think if I had to choose one, that would be the one worth staying up for. No question. That's going to be a fun basketball game. I mean, my bracket is shot. Arkansas and Michigan are about the only teams I have left. I did have Arkansas going to the Final Four and losing. I had Michigan going all the way. So I need all the help I can get here. Got to pull for the Hogs tonight over Baylor.
I mean, God forbid it goes into overtime. And all right, Nabin, this is a special story between Kevin and I, because back in the day, okay, when you had to have a little more hands-on approach with some of the radio stuff you were doing, Kevin and I would get caught up sometimes running March Madness stuff where you'd have a game going like to 5 overtimes, and you'd be running the board or running the game or whatever, and it would start at like 9. And then it regulation would end at 11:15, and then you'd have 5 overtimes, and then the post game you'd be up there at 2:10 in the morning, having run a 7-hour basketball game, just wanting it to be over.
Yep.
That's
something. It's back in the old school days of radio where you had to live assist a lot of stuff, and like you said, you get to the point where everybody else is like, "Man, did you see that game?" Nah, I went to sleep. I just couldn't hack it. Did you see it? Well, yeah, I had to, because I was live running it, and it was about 5th overtime. I'm sitting there going, "Will anybody knock a shot down and let's go home?" I mean, it's one of those crazy things. But yeah, I hope we see a game that's that good. If it goes to overtime, make it 1, and somebody win the game from there. Or we could just do the soccer thing and just start shooting free throws till somebody missed, and we'll call it the old guy rule, where it's like, hey, there's people that got to get up and go to work tomorrow. We're just going to shoot free throws till somebody misses, and that's it. And
no, I like that. But you mentioned Nolan Richardson earlier. I think people sometimes are taking a short-sighted approach to some of the quote non-traditional powers being in the Elite Eight. I mean, I agree. A team like Oregon State is an obvious newcomer, but man, UCLA is in the Elite Eight. Michigan, I mean, Ben, the names you mentioned, I mean, the run in the early 90s. Arkansas was right there as one of the best programs in the country in the mid-90s. I mean, you're talking about Houston, which was an iconic, and still is, an iconic basketball name. There may not be Carolina, there may not be Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, but there are some just storied, iconic programs that are going to be on display the next couple of nights.
I'm looking forward to it. I am rooting for Michigan, BJ, for the simple fact that what they going to say then? What, national championship head coach Juwan Howard? They're gonna be like, well, what about the old banners? I mean, I just think certain times, man, certain things have run its course. But I think all these guys, all these teams are deserving. BJ, now Gonzaga, it was different when it was around the 64-32. Now getting close to the Final Four, can they deal with the pressure? So far, so good. But watch out for the Arkansas boys, BJ, man. They stand there. The rest of the SEC say we play football too. Our athletic director have to work past bowl season.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll switch gears. We'll look at the draft from the Falcons' perspective this time. And do the Falcons in a lot of ways now dictate the draft? We'll break it down next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin Thomas, BJ Bennett, Ben Troop. Glad you are with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com on your mobile device with the ESPN app, live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube as well. Draft upcoming. We talked about the Jags earlier in the show, but look at the Falcons sitting there at number 4. We kind of talked about what would you take for their pick at 4. A lot of thought that it's quarterback. Could be 4 quarterbacks in a row by the time it gets to the Falcons. But do the Falcons kind of dictate how this draft plays out, where if the Falcons don't go quarterback, it changes the whole dynamic of the draft there at number 4. If they trade out, could change the dynamic of the draft. Do the Falcons kind of dictate the way this thing plays out, in your opinion?
Sure. I mean, they're one of the catalysts. I think Atlanta is absolutely one of the catalysts for the draft because it's kind of impossible to predict what's going to happen until you know what happens with them. But are they the catalyst? I would say no. I think San Francisco is, because after they just traded up to 3, and with all the speculation about all the stuff they could do, they're not necessarily set on a quarterback. They may go Mac Jones. I mean, imagine, and Ben, we've seen that, right? Speculation that the Niners may go Mac Jones. So theoretically, for all the talk about 4 quarterbacks going, I mean, what if Mac Jones goes at 3? What does that do? And does that dramatically increase the value of Atlanta's pick? I mean, that's why Atlanta is so interesting, because if you see Atlanta at 4 and you assume Lawrence is going 1 and you assume Wilson is going 2, I mean, if San Francisco takes Mac Jones, you're going to have, I would imagine, countless phone calls from people not only wanting Justin Fields, who to me would be the best player left on the board, but also Trey Lance. I mean, a lot of people are very high on Trey Lance. So could you see Atlanta's number 4 position, and Cincinnati at 5 is obviously not going to take a quarterback. I think they want Sewell. Best case scenario, maybe Chase. We'll see, to reunite with Burrow. But if you're Atlanta at 4, I think what San Francisco does really puts the spotlight on you and what you can do.
Yeah, well, San Francisco has already made it known that they're going for a quarterback because of the position they moved. They let you know they moved on from Jimmy Garoppolo. But I do still think it's Atlanta, because, as you say, Cincinnati wants Penei Sewell, but they got the 5th pick. They got to see what Atlanta's going to do. Then, if just say it goes Lawrence, Wilson, and just say San Francisco does what nobody else will do, maybe with Dan Orlovsky and Chris Sims, and they get Mac Jones, you still got Justin Fields and Trey Lance. Once again, you got bargaining now, BJ, because the thing about it is I do think you go with Justin Fields if he's there at 4. But if you number 4, and we talk about what Atlanta's looking to try to do, is what are they trying to set themselves up for? Right? If they're trying to set themselves up for right now, they don't get Justin Fields. They're gonna get a skill position guy. So do the run on the skill position guys, because here's the thing about the quarterback position. Once quarterbacks start slipping, they'll keep slipping. Because teams will go, well, dude, they didn't go top 5, so maybe their draft visit, maybe we had them a little bit higher. So I do think it's going to start with the 4th pick, and it makes Terry Fontenot's position a little bit intriguing, because he says that you can never ever have enough quarterbacks. He came out and said that in one of his early press conferences. But then they need offensive line play. But then they need a running back. They're not going to get a running back. But then Atlanta has been their best when they had 3 great receivers, or 2 great receivers, a tight end, a running game, and Matty Ice. I think they're going to probably try to go, later in the draft for a running back. But I do think it starts number 4, BJ, because the thing is this: forget the trades before the draft. The trades that happen on the day of, we got a trade, and people go, oh, don't think that Atlanta can't trade out of that 4 spot if they don't cut. Because if you don't covet nobody, don't just get him just to get him. I think if Justin Fields is there, you get him. But if I don't think Justin Fields is going lower than 3. Mac Jones.
Well, I mean, Ben, and I've talked about that. I'll ask BJ this as well. When you look at it and say, all right, if it comes down to Trey Lance, are you sold on that guy? I mean, if I look at it, if I'm the Falcons, I think number 4 becomes uberly valuable for somebody reaching for a quarterback. You have Matt Ryan. I don't think you need a quarterback. And to me, if it's Trey Lance, I'm calling everybody who's interested to trade back. Now if Justin Fields there, I think you do it. Depending on how they feel, it doesn't seem like Zach Wilson will be there at 4, but if he is, maybe that's an option. Just to me, there's other quarterbacks that I could get that maybe are similar to Trey Lance, or I might think could do just as good a job I can get later in the draft. I'm trying to trade out at number 4, BJ, if it's me, and Trey Lance is my quote unquote best option there. I just don't. To me, if he's the pick at 4, I'm not making it if I'm Atlanta.
Yeah, it's interesting, and this is I'm talking to you about the draft. I'm chatting with Cody in the chat box about the draft because this is so fascinating. And I know a lot of people have said Pitts potentially to Atlanta at 4. I think Pitts is extraordinary. I have him number one on my SEC big board. But it's interesting when you think about Atlanta's situation, as you referenced, because with Fields, for example, and I agree. I don't think Lance is a top 5 pick. I like Lance, but that's a lot to say he's going to be a top 5 pick. But for Fields, you have, at least in the minds of a number of people, a generational franchise quarterback. I know some people have said, "Hey, I don't necessarily love him as much as Lawrence or Wilson." Okay, I think we all agree he's still a superstar quarterback and a once every couple of year kind of guy. If you draft him, it's because he's great, obviously, but it's also because you don't plan on being here again, right? In order to draft a player like Fields, you have to be in the top 5. Well, if you're Atlanta, if you're Fontenot, if you're Smith, you don't plan on being here again. You plan on drafting in the 20s, or even if you have a bad season, in the teens. So it's the argument of not only is Fields a great player, and I think he's wonderful, it's you're in the top 5 for what you hope is a once every 20-year occurrence.
But
and while you're there, you might as well.
Not being back? Do you really plan on not being back? San Francisco was also planning not to be back in the top 5, but guess what? They made it happen. So you're saying Atlanta can't do the same thing as San Francisco's doing?
Well, I mean, they also had their starting quarterback miss the season due to injury. I think anything could happen. Obviously, if you have Matt Ryan go down and miss the entire season due to injury, you're probably going to be drafted in the top 5 again. But again, you're playing the odds.
We're in the top 5. They traded in to get into the top 5.
No, but I'm saying with Garoppolo's injury, you're talking about a situation that changed the dynamic for San Francisco. I think the 49ers after the Super Bowl thought they would at least be in that relative mix, and then a dramatic injury changed that. I don't think Atlanta, and of course, Cody, you never know, but I don't think Atlanta thinks or feels like they're going to be drafting in the top 5 in the next couple of years. Whereas Jacksonville, if you go back Jacksonville a couple of years, I think Jacksonville probably in their heart of hearts still understood, look, we're probably going to be drafting high again. Atlanta feels like this is an outlier. This is an opportunity that is an outlier. You have not been in the top 5 very often. And correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin. You took Michael Vick at 1, and you took what, Matt Ryan in the top 3?
You took Matt Ryan at 3.
Yeah. So when you've been at the top in the past, you've used those rare statistical outliers to take the quarterback. I think that makes sense, and I also think trading down to address potentially your biggest weakness makes sense because, and Ben, you can ask this, I'll ask you this, and I love Pitts. No one loves Pitts more than me. But for Atlanta, who already has an elite passing game, they do. They already have an elite passing game. If you draft Pitts, I don't know that there's not much room for passing game improvement. You might be better, but you're already really good, and I don't know how much better you can get. Whereas if, let's say, you trade down and you get 3 defensive pieces and you draft, let's say, Christian Barmore, Eric Stokes, and Tyler Shelvin, I think you can get dramatically and immediately considerably better on defense. So it's a lot to consider.
No, I mean, I think it makes sense. I agree with Kevin. If Trey Lance is there, I don't think you bet the farm on him. But this is the thing about BJ. You mentioned generational talents, right? Generational quarterbacks. It's so many different generational ways to look at the word generational now. We look at what these quarterbacks have meant. Drew Brees is arguably the best we've ever seen. He went to 1 Super Bowl. He went to 1, and he was in the league for 20 years. Joe Flacco, was he a generational quarterback for the Ravens? I would say so. He took them to a Super Bowl. Phillip Rivers, people consider him a Hall of Famer, never been to a Super Bowl, but generational. So it just depends. Like, you putting guys of different calibers. I mean, I look at Peyton Manning as a generational quarterback. When he was with the Colts, he went to 2 Super Bowls, won one, lost one, won a second, went to 2 with Denver, but won because of defense. So when you start, I think that's why these quarterbacks are going so high. They're not putting them in the same category as far as like generation. Trevor Lawrence, they look at him as being the face of the league, pretty soon. A guy like Zach Wilson could be more like a Russell Wilson. Take a team that hasn't been good for a long time, make them good, go to Super Bowls. Trey Lance is going to be, more like a maybe like a Lamar Jackson, just a freakish athlete that can help his team.
But Ben, let me make this pick, and Cody, this is what I was getting at. It's not that obviously you can't have a bad season you didn't anticipate. But I think what Atlanta might think, and Fontenot might think, we don't know this, is, hey, we're a stable organization. We have good players. We have Matt Ryan, who's going to be around for a couple of more years potentially. And again, that's going to be a unique situation to massage. But we don't. But we don't necessarily think we're going to be picking in the top 5. Every time Atlanta's had a top 4 pick over the last 30 years, they've taken a quarterback. So I think there's at least a historical precedent for the idea of we're really, really high up in the draft. We don't want to be here again. We might as well take the quarterback while we're in the position to do so, even if he doesn't play right away. But as you've mentioned, I don't know how you quantify that when you have a guy who's really good. I think Matt Ryan was in the top 5 in the league in passing last year. How do you value Justin Fields if he theoretically may not only play this year, Kevin? But I mean, could you draft Justin Fields and not play him for 2 years?
Yep.
I think you're starting the quarterback controversy for no reason. He's 35 years old. You got QBs playing to 42. He's got 10 straight seasons of 4,000 yards. You're not making a quarterback controversy. You are pretty much saying this guy. You have 2 years left, maybe max 3 years left with the Atlanta Falcons. There, Matt Ryan. That's exactly what I'm saying. You're not going to let him sit behind him that long and then not play him. So you are giving Matt Ryan a ticking clock. Hey,
no, I think you're giving him less than that. If you go, you get 1 year. I think you get 1 year.
That's what I'm saying, dude. And he's 35. He's the only quarterback right now that has 10 straight. He has the longest streak of 4,000 yards right now. He is an Iron Man. He plays every game. He's going to play for a while. If you're not going to say he's going to play to like 42, which is going to be insane because he's still slinging the ball. He's 10 straight seasons since he was 25. He was 24 the last time he threw for under 4,000 yards. That was a decade ago. And now you start quarterback controversy when you don't need to.
No, it's not good. No quarterback controversies happen in college football. They're not going to happen in the National Football League. When you say Matty Ice is going to play a while, he's already done it. He's already played a while with the same team. If Vanderbilt, the going rate for a head coach is 6 years, a long time for a quarterback in the league, 14. I think Matty Ice is in year 13 or 14. And you're right. He got 4 good years. He's had 10 great, really good years. And the thing is, I look at it like this. If I can get my future right now, and he's on my roster right now, you know why people are doing that? 2 words. Patrick Mahomes. When he got drafted, no one knew what he was going to become, and he sat behind Alex Smith, and then Alex Smith got out of town. I am not saying these players are going to be that, but you know how it is, Kevin? All the NFL got to do is see it. Okay, that's what we got to do. Get it. Bring the guy in, get to it. And so I just think that for me, if it's Justin Fields, get him. If it's Trey Lance, Mac Jones, or dare I say Kyle Trask, leave it the hell alone because I don't think those guys are going to be good enough. I just don't.
And again, I think that's why a lot of people think maybe we see if the Falcons stick with that pick and it's Trey Lance, maybe you have the top positional player at every other position still available on your big board. They might go another direction and kind of change the talking points and the momentum of that draft. We got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you along here, 3 and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Glad you are with us here on this Monday. We are streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com, also live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. If you miss any portion of the show, you can go to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, ESPNCoastal.com, get a podcasted version of the show as well. But glad to be here with you on this Monday. Elite Eight basketball coming up tonight. Braves baseball back. BJ and Ben on Thursday, 3 days out. We go. Mike Soroka is going to pitch maybe an inning or two tomorrow. We are getting the final roster kind of put out there as we move forward. And I know I'm not going to be here the rest of the week, so I know you may do some predictions. I like the Braves in the East. I'm going to say 90 wins will get it done for the Braves in the East, because I really think the Mets, Braves, Phillies, Nationals are going to beat up on each other a little bit. I think 90 wins can get it done.
I like it. I think it's going to be a competitive run. I think it's going to be back and forth. I've already emotionally prepared myself for the fact that the Braves may lose a series or two. I don't like it. But, I mean, dude, that's the old Bobby Cox adage, right? Just win a series. Just win a series. You got 3 games, win 2. You got 4 games, win 3. If you can do that, you're going to be all right. You're going to move forward. But, yes, I think the Braves are, in my mind, the clear favorite to win a 3rd straight division title. And that doesn't mean I don't think the Mets are better. That doesn't mean I don't think the Nats are better. That doesn't mean I don't at least appreciate the talent that Philadelphia has. I mean, Kevin, we'll see it later in the week and into the weekend and next week, obviously. But in your mind, who's the top? I mean, let's get some picks. Ben, let's ask him sports. I mean, if he's got to make picks for a couple of days.
No. Forget. Hold on. Before we get to the picks. No. Hold on. All right, Kevin, because Kevin, looking at the totality of the Braves right now, because every year they missing something. And the only way you can make over $20 million with the Braves is if they pick you up in the offseason and give you a 1-year deal. They bring back Marcel before they even talk about the DH. You talk about Mike Soroka. He's going to be here sooner rather than later. You talk about the rotation. Talk about the lineup. Is this the best Braves team that you've seen in a while before they even go out there to not just compete for the National League East? Can they deal with them boys out there in LA?
I think by season's end, we'll feel better about it. Again, I think when BJ and I got into discussions of where does this team stack up rotation-wise, I think let's see. Ian Anderson is on an ascension. Max Fried on an ascension. Mike Soroka on an ascension. I would like to see more from Ian Anderson other than just a 1-month kind of run at it. I mean, I'm not saying that's not good, but we've seen that Jose Constanza is a 1-month guy. I'm not saying Ian Anderson is that, but let's see him do it over the course of the season before we proclaim him to be the next Cy Young winner. But I do think this Braves team is right there. As far as the Braves team is in totality, this might be the most complete Braves team that we've seen in quite some time. Because you go back and look at the Smoltz, Glavine, Maddox baseball teams, they were good. I don't think they had close to the offensive firepower that this Braves team does. It was pitching, close the ball game. You're not beating Glavine, Maddox, and Smoltz most of the time, and those Braves teams would never have 2-3 game losing streaks because one of those guys would come in and hammer you home a dub. So I think it's close. The pitching probably not on the starting end where Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz were. Could it get there? Absolutely could. And this lineup is as good as I've seen on the Braves in a long, long time. I mean, I know that people, BJ, you know me, I don't like saying this is the greatest ever. I just think you live in the moment too much when you say stuff like that. But I do think from top to bottom, pitching, bullpen, lineup, this might be one of the best Braves teams we've seen 20, 30 years in terms of the potential it has there on the roster. Bench leaves a lot to be desired, I think, at spots, but the rest of it is really, really good. Are they better than the Dodgers? I wouldn't say that today. Let's see how they progress throughout the season. They were awfully close at the end of last year, but I would say they are running second to the Dodgers right now.
Yeah, all right. Well, let's get some predictions on paper here or on the record. So before the season starts, give me how you see the National League East playing out. Give me the predicted order of finish.
For National League East, I will say the Braves 1. I'm going to put the Nationals 2. I will say the Mets 3, Phillies 4, Marlins last, but not as far out as they have been in years past. But that 2, 3, 4 is going to be very tight, I believe. I think the Braves end up winning it, maybe 4 or 5 games ahead of second place, but I think 2, 3, 4, it's going to be a battle. You just look at those rosters; they're very, very good. A pretty competitive bunch. I think the East has probably the best starting pitching as a division in the National League. But give me the Braves, followed by the Nationals, Phillies, Mets. Or did I say no? Excuse me. I said Braves, Nationals, Mets, Phillies, is I believe what I said the first time. Let me get that straight. Sorry about that.
I mean, Kevin, man, what's your confidence level? I don't like when I sound like BJ, man. Like going into, I don't say words like confidence and level put together. But what is your confidence level with this Braves team? I mean, just from a talent standpoint, I know BJ loves pitching, and I get it. I'm coming around with that. But all Acuna knows is winning. All Albies knows is winning. Ian Anderson, hey man, I get caught up. I'm 4 hours away from going to the World Series. How confident are you? Taking nothing away from what the other teams did around the division. How confident are you talent-wise with this Braves team before they kick things off?
I'm very confident. I think talent-wise, it's hard to argue what they have. Now, the things that can derail that, obviously injury. If Ronald Acuna or Marcell Ozuna miss significant amount of time, if that starting pitching ends up with an injury bug situation, I mean, just look at what it did last year. And you had worse pitching, BJ, than this bunch has. I think this team is really, really good. If you are coming to this season saying, I don't know about this team, no, the bar's high. It's getting the playoffs. It's compete. And I think compete for the National League and try to go to the World Series. That's where I think the bar is. Wouldn't have said that a couple years ago. It's, hey, try it again and get there. If this team gets to the postseason and gets one series out, you could call that disappointing and maybe even call that a failure. This team is good enough to compete. I don't think it's World Series or bust, but you should be competing once again for the right to go there.
All right, I like that, Ben. We're going to have the Final Four set before we hear from Kevin again, so let's get those picks officially made. Let's start with tonight. You got Oregon State and Houston and Arkansas and Baylor.
I feel like you get to this point and Cinderella slippers start falling off, and I think Houston's going to move on. I know you can say they're Cinderella, but they're also the 2 seed. They've been really, really good. I think the slipper falls off of Oregon State tonight. Give me Houston to move on. I have Arkansas in my bracket going to the Final Four. So common sense or anything about that aside, I got to stick with that just for my bracket. But I do think surviving the scare against a team like Oral Roberts, where I know it's March, I know it's but I think back in their mind, Arkansas sitting there going, this is a 15 seed. Like, they're not even supposed to be here. We'll go out there and get it done. I'm going to go with Arkansas on my other half to play Houston in the Final Four.
All right, and then tomorrow night you got Gonzaga and SC and Michigan and UCLA.
I got to say, I'm going to go I have Michigan in my bracket to go all the way. I still like them to move forward. I didn't have Gonzaga moving in because I just felt like Gonzaga has always been that team that's so close. But, man, you start watching them play, BJ, they are really, really, really good. Like, this might be Mark Few's best team, and I feel like unless they just have an extremely off night, they to me seem like a lock for the Final Four if they get by the UCLA, and I think they're going to do it. I mean, they look really, really good. Maybe the most complete team, top to bottom, in the tournament. And so I take back all my predictions on Gonzaga about I had them getting knocked out in this round to somebody else, but man, do I feel kind of silly for even thinking that. They look really, really good.
I mean, Kevin, stick by them picks later on. I mean, Kevin was like, listen,
I'm not sticking by anything. I say it on the show, and then I hope you forget. So that way, when I'm wrong, it doesn't have to come back around to me.
I mean, BJ, is there something you want to say to Mama Bennett? I mean, obviously, you're supposed to be the basketball guru, and, she leading the way right now.
She's doing a great job. She's been excellent with her picks. She's number one. Look, my mom has always been just a tremendous sports fan. That's where my passion for following sports comes from. So, but I do think it's interesting how on the show y'all keep saying, BJ, your mom's beating you. Okay, first off, my mom knows a ton about sports, and second off, I'm beating y'all. So she's beating y'all. And
wait.
Stick to the conversation.
Goodness, I mean, is that really saying something? You beat me in
yeah. Everybody who's up there right now, because Cam's beating me. But if Christian's still up there, Kevin, you, Ben, Cody, I'm beating all y'all. I'm beating all. But yeah, my mom's probably going to win it. Shout out to my mom.
So basically, don't listen. Kevin's not going to reveal it unless he wins it. BJ is not smarter than his mom when it comes to the NCAA tournament. And well, I mean, I should have just went chalk, basically.
That's still a good strategy in my book at the end of the day. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live ESPNCoastal.com.
do-do-do-do-do, baby shark, do-do-do-do-do, baby shark. Mommy shark, do-do-do-do.
Hey, this is Ryan McGee, senior writer with ESPN, and you're listening to 3 and Out with BJ, Ben, and Kevin.
It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you are with us here on this Monday. Elite Eight games coming up tonight. We'll have half of the Final Four set, and then another round of Elite Eight games for you tomorrow night. BJ, been a heck of a tournament so far. I mean, who knows what to expect the way this thing has played out so far.
And if you can stay up, I do think Baylor, Arkansas is going to be really good. A lot of up-tempo basketball, a lot of shooting, a great athletic play in the paint. I think that one has the potential to be kind of one of those classic back and forth March Madness games. It comes down to, a bucket or two at the end. But yeah, I mean, Oregon State, look, nobody thought they would be here. They got to try to beat Houston, a Houston team that is really balanced and really talented. And then you get it all tomorrow night as well with the Elite Eight narrowing down to the Final Four. So March Madness is special. It's awesome, and really looking forward to these games coming up.
My team ain't in it no more. I wish everybody else the best moving forward.
What analysis?
I'm just saying. I mean, I come on, Zags, but Juwan Howard. Hey man, do it for that. Do it, win it for the pettiness in me. That way, Kevin, they got to readdress the past, baby. I love it.
Taking his ball and going home. My team's not there. Fine.
I'm not rooting for Arkansas with that SEC crap.
No, come on. I think it will be a great game. I like Arkansas to move on coming up tomorrow or after tonight into the Final Four round. We've got more tomorrow for you on 3 and Out. We appreciate Jake Roos joining us here from UJSports.com, John Shipley from Jaguar Report, and Russell Demasi, Savannah State offensive coordinator, joined us here on 3 and Out. Savannah State won their game Saturday 85-0 to finish their spring season. We'll see you tomorrow, 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network.